Welcome to your real estate market update. We are into July. It is hard to believe we are halfway through 2025. I hope your year has been great. We're going to look at what has gone on in the Triangle, Raleigh, and Durham in the first half of 2025. And we'll look at what's going on today and finish up with buyer and seller dynamics. And I'll look at what experts are saying is going to happen for the rest of the year. So I'm going to share my screen and we will get right into it. So I want to start with the entire Triangle region and paying attention to this year-to-date box over here. So some important things to note, like one, I know there's a lot of negative news about real estate right now. Sales are down, home prices are down. You hear that all the time on the news, and that's important to know that information. But one of the things to remember about real estate is very local. So it's important to know what's going on in your local market. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is really focus on what's going on locally, because what is going on here is a little bit different than what we're seeing in other parts of the United States and across the country nationally. So to start with, in the entire Triangle region, new listings are up about 15% when compared to last year. That's great news. If you're a buyer in the market today, there are more options available for you than there have been in the years past. So great news for buyers. There's more things for you to see, more options for you to look at. Another point, days on market, 25 days on the market up versus last year. That's another great thing. Homes are staying on the market a little bit longer. So you as a buyer, you have a little bit more time to do your research, see the home, maybe see a second showing, get your questions answered before you actually move forward with an offer. Next, we'll look at closed sales. So in the entire Triangle MLS region, closed sales are up 2.6% compared to last year. This is where we're a little bit different than other parts of the country that are seeing a decline. And when we look at the median and the average sales price, you can see they're flat versus last year. Again, a little bit different than what we're seeing across the country. So 22 of the top 50 markets across the country have seen a decline in home prices. So we're a little bit different than some of those other parts of the country, flat versus last year for both the median and the average sales price. Wanted to call your attention to these two percentages here. So we are seeing price reductions on listings here and there across the Triangle. But I wouldn't say that sellers are, listing prices are plummeting, and it's shown in these percentages here. So this first percentage, 97%, shows what percent a seller is getting of the original list price. So they're coming off that original list price about 3%. This second percentage, 98.8, is saying, what did they get of the last list price that the house was at before it went under contract? So if a seller's on the market, they've done a couple price reductions, whatever that final number is when it goes under contract, that's what this is looking at and comparing to whatever the closed sales price was. So even then, sellers are coming off of their final list price a little over 1%, but nothing huge, not like 5-10% or anything like that. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. So that is for the entire Triangle region. What's going on in Raleigh? We see a similar trend with new listings. New listings are up 11%, but sales are actually down versus last year, down 4.5%. They were down almost 3% for the month of June. But when we look at the average sales price and the median sales price, up over 3%. Both of them are up over 3%. The average sales price in Raleigh, $593,000. And when we look at the percentages, both the percent that a seller is getting of the original list price and of the last list price received, very similar to what we see across the Triangle, coming off almost 3% of that original list price and a little over percent off the final list price. 30 days on the market, which is up versus last year. Again, not a bad thing for buyers. You have a little more time to look at homes. And obviously with listings being up, there's more options available for you. So great news in Raleigh as well. And then looking at Durham, Durham actually has a 17% increase in new listings, so higher than the entire Triangle region, which was at about 14.9%. Home sales are down 1.7%, but you can see what happened in June. They had a big June, up almost 15% when compared to June of last year. And then the average sales price for both year-to-date, median and average sales price, up when compared to last year. But you can see a little bit of a different picture when we look at the median and the average sales price for the month of June. And the percentages that a seller is getting of the original list price and the last list price are very similar to what we saw in the entire Triangle region and Raleigh as well. 27 days on the market, which is up versus last year, but pretty consistent with the numbers that we see across the Triangle and in Raleigh. So that's what's going on in the first half of the year and what is going on today in the real estate market. And it's funny when I do these, I I think about when I was doing these maybe a year or two ago, and I would look at what is active and coming soon on the market in Raleigh, Cary, and Durham, and the number would be like 1,200. Well, now, we're seeing a rise in inventory. So now we have over 3,400 homes available for sale, Raleigh, Cary, and Durham as of today. And this includes new construction, which that's one of the things to think about too. New construction, there may be additional new construction options out there because not all new construction, quick move-in homes, they call them, or inventory homes, go into the MLS. So when we look at what is just new construction that's on the market today, 843. What's under contract today in Raleigh, Cary, and Durham, almost 1,750 homes. And then what sold last month? Since we're so early into July, I wanted to look at what sold in June in Raleigh, Cary, and Durham. 1,235 homes combined in, Raleigh, Cary, and Durham. And that's actually up versus last year. So last year in June, Raleigh, Cary, Durham combined were 1,175 homes sold and closed. So that's what's going on today in the real estate market in the triangle. And we'll finish up with what's going on with buyers and sellers. And we'll talk a little bit about projections for the rest of the year. So first thing we're going to look at is buyer and seller dynamics have definitely shifted. I mean, I have listings on the market. I'm also working with buyers. Buyer demand has definitely softened. And obviously we're seeing more listings on the market. So when we look at the estimated number of buyers and sellers that are active in the market, you can see, 1.9 million sellers, 1.4 million buyers. And it's interesting to look at this trend line, especially considering what happened during the pandemic. You can see, the active sellers dropped significantly in 2021, 2022. And then as rates started to come up, we saw buyer activity coming down as well. And it's been a little bit volatile over the last few years. But as of right now, the dynamics have shifted. More sellers than there are buyers in the market. And a quote, fewer buyers means less competition for home listings and more pressure on sellers to dial back their asking price or list price and make other concessions to help get a deal done. And this is one of the things that conversations I'm having with sellers today. It's so important to price right from the start. We really have to analyze the data. We have to look at, what sold in the area. You really have to have your home dialed in, ready to go, looking great, marketed properly, and priced right in order to sell in today's market. So price is so important today, more than it has been in the last several years. I mentioned this earlier. So 22 of the 50 largest metros have falling home prices. And you can see that's led by Austin, Tampa, and then Dallas. And then you can see, Cleveland, Ohio. So I'm from Cleveland. Cleveland is seeing a big increase in home price sales. But you can see this. It's just kind of an interesting dynamic that 22, so almost half of the largest metros have falling home prices. But like we saw in our data, in the entire Triangle region, in Raleigh, in Durham, our home prices are staying strong. So what is going to happen in the second half of 2025? So it's always interesting. And I do like to go back and look at what experts projected at the beginning of the year, and then they make adjustments to their projections. So we have a lot of new projections today. And I always find it interesting, the adjustments and what direction certain companies go and things like that. And so I've had a lot of people ask me, what do I think is going to happen? So I'm glad to be able to share these forecasts with you. So home price forecasts. And this is relatively recent. These companies have reevaluated what they originally said at the beginning of the year was going to happen with home prices. So when we look at all of these companies, there are 8 companies, 6 of them are still projecting an increase in home prices. Redfin and Zillow are projecting a decline. If you average all 8 of these, you get about a 2% home price appreciation, which that's normal. It's healthy appreciation. So it's not a bad thing. Another quote, the vibes for home prices are growing much more bearish. For the rest of 2025, we can see that inventory levels, especially in the Sun Belt, are now sufficient to put downward pressure on home prices. This seems likely to continue and spread across more states. And I think this is the most important part of this quote. However, there isn't much in the data that shows significant price declines. So those of you who are waiting for like the 20% price declines, before you jump into the market, there's no data to really support that is going to happen. So that's something to take into consideration if you're sitting on the sidelines waiting to get in the market. I thought this was interesting. When we look at these different companies and what their original forecast was and how it compares to their current forecast, we actually see three of the companies have increased their forecast from where they were at the beginning of the year. So Fannie Mae, Cotality, and then the National Association of Realtors have increased their forecast compared to what they said at the beginning of the year. And then you can see the orange, they're reducing their forecast, but they're still saying that we're going to see an increase in home price appreciation. And then you have the couple, Redfin and Zillow, that went from positive into the negative. So the original forecast overall average was about a 3% home price appreciation to about 2% home price appreciation. Looking ahead through the rest of this year and into 2026, we don't expect mortgage rates to come down much, at least not through the third quarter of 2025. So affordability will remain pressured. And I think this is something important. I talk to a lot of people about mortgage rates all the time. It's a big topic of conversation. And I know that the experts projected that they were going to come down, and they did start coming down, but then everything kind of changed. We have seen a little bit of relief over the last few weeks. But if you're sitting on the sidelines and you're waiting for rates to come down before you get in the market, it's not likely that we're going to see them to come down, mortgage rates to come down much this year. Don't expect a big drop in mortgage rates. Whoops. So this shows you what experts are projecting by quarter. So you can see the average of all three for the third quarter, 6.68. The fourth quarter, 6.62, and then maybe into first and second quarter, we might see the rates come down to below 6.5%. That's usually when I see my business change, is when we see rates come down to below 6.5%. It's between 6 and 6.5%. It opens up a little bit, and more buyers qualify, and we see more buyers come into the market. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next several quarters, and what happens with mortgage rates, because you can project what's going to happen with mortgage rates. And then that, obviously, as we have seen so far this year, that's not necessarily what has happened. Sales will remain low, but up slightly from last year. We see that in the triangle. So we are still seeing a slight increase in home sales when compared to last year. And they're projecting that nationally as well. And this is what all the experts are projecting. National Association of Realtors, 4.3 million, 4.2. So everybody's pretty much increasing or projecting an increase in real estate sales when compared to 2024. We're just not going to see a huge increase. And that pretty much covers everything that I wanted to talk about today on your July real estate market update. As always, if you have questions about the real estate market, if you're local here, you want more information, don't hesitate to reach out. If you want more videos like this, or you want to see other market updates, check out my YouTube channel. Welcome to Raleigh. I look forward to talking to you again soon, and I hope you have a great day.